All right. Hey, guys. Happy Monday. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I have Nico House with me tonight to do the news. What's going on, Nico?
What's going on? Thanks for having me back.
Awesome. I want to go ahead and get into the AOC and Cenk comments. So I'm going to play AOC's video first. And first, I want to show you guys the difference between the tweets that some of the members of the squad will make versus the comments that they'll make when they go on to some of these shows. So let me go ahead and share really quick. All right, so here we go. So this was the tweet that AOC made. She said, the conflict between Ukraine and Russia is profoundly concerning, but military conflict is not the solution. We must seek a diplomatic resolution rather than escalate tensions and avoid sanctions that hurt the Ukrainian people. Now, that is what she tweeted, but I want you to listen to what she actually said.
From all the domestic fights that are going on, there's a big actual real fight, a war possibly about to happen in Europe. How concerned are you about what's happening in Ukraine? How worried are you about a full-scale war involving the US? And do you think Biden has handled this crisis well so far? Badly? Okay. What's your grade?
Well, I'm quite concerned about some of the dynamics here. One of them, frankly, is that you have an entire military industrial complex outside of the US military, but, part of this complex of contractors that frankly just left Afghanistan and are starved for revenue. And I'm very concerned about the urgency of this situation really becoming and materializing into a situation that could be exploited by for-profit.
What the fuck should we talk about?
Ukraine is of profound concern. And the Biden administration is well within their right to seek a diplomatic resolution to this issue, one that does not hurt the Ukrainian people, but allows them to exercise their right to self-determination and to continue to be a self-determined nation. And so I believe that the Biden administration is well within their right to counter Russia's aggression diplomatically, but there is not a military solution to this problem. And in fact, on top of that, there's great concern. Fareed Zakaria made an excellent point in the Washington Post that there's also oil pipelines here at play, and the potential design and entertainment of certain sanctions could precipitate an energy crisis. And so we cannot ignore the role of fossil fuels and frankly, climate change and the great need for energy transition, the contributions that those are making to the present situation.
What the hell is she talking about? I think she got briefed. I'm sure she was told days ago that she was supposed to do this interview. I don't think she looked at anything about Russia and the Ukraine until 10 minutes before the interview.
Yeah, she didn't seem like she knew what she was talking about. That's why I was like, does she know what she's saying? It just sounds like word salad to me.
Why would we sanction the Ukraine when we're quote unquote allying ourselves with them? That's first of all, that's just before we even get into all that, can I just say, because I feel like this doesn't get said enough. The US has given weapons and funding to Nazis in West Ukraine. Not just freedom fighters. Literally Nazis. Not, they are just some mean Trump supporters with tiki torches. Descended from the Nazis who were there during World War II and were kicked into West Ukraine that eventually became part of the entirety of the Ukraine after losing to the Soviet Union. Joe Biden and the administration give money to Nazis. Obama gave money to Nazis. The U.S. is funding Nazism as we speak. And she's like, I think that Biden is well within his right to fund literal Nazis.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's why I said I don't think she knew what she was really talking about. I mean, like, I feel like when it comes to foreign policy, I feel like that's not really her playing field. She's just not good with foreign policy. It is what it is. We all have things that we're good at, things that we're not good at. But I really think that she should have actually like done her research before she made that appearance. And for people who don't
it's
know,
bizarre though, because the fact that you brought that up, we know that foreign policy isn't her thing. She's embarrassed herself every single time she opens her mouth up about foreign policy. So why did MSNBC and the Democratic Party march out AOC to talk about this particular subject? That's what's bizarre. Like, it's almost like they don't have control of the narrative anymore. They can't just throw Russia out there and everyone just approve of military intervention. So they're like, let's throw somebody out there that we've, built up a certain level of trust for and see if the leftists and liberals would get behind AOC. And she just, good God, that was bad. It was really bad.
She bombed it too. And I was mentioning this last week when I was talking about like Ukraine and Russia, because people were asking like, what does NATO have to do with this? And what I wanted people to understand is that NATO was not supposed to expand. And so I played this video from Vosh last week who's talking about, well, no, I don't think there was an agreement. No, there was an agreement. After the Berlin Wall fell, the United States government agreed that NATO would not expand, and it's been expanding.
Yeah. So, yeah. That's part of the reason that they were taking Eastern European countries and granting them accession into the EU was to expand NATO, but doing it under the pretense of, oh, well, all the EU countries are part of NATO. So we're not really expanding. The EU is expanding. And there were certain, certain guidelines, like you couldn't be corrupt, whatever the hell that means. But also, more specifically, you could be put under austerity. And you owe the EU money, and then once you get into that debt is when they fully bring you in, and then of course you have to bend to the will of NATO at that point. And also should probably be mentioned, the first chairman of NATO's military committee was Adolf Hussein. He was literally like a high-ranking general in Hitler's Nazi army. Like, I'm not, when I tell you that it is not hyperbole to say that the United States has been funding Nazism, we've been playing cover for Nazism. The reason that we're funding West Ukraine as they bombard East Ukraine, not just because they're Russian sympathizers, but also because there are a lot of ethnic Ukrainians and ethnic Russians in that area. Like, everything about this screams Nazism. And we are in the center, and nobody is really talking about that part enough. It never really gets brought up, but this isn't a situation like the Nazism that's taking place. It's not unique for the U.S. This is actually par for the course since right around the time of World War II. We made Hitler what he was. We built his army to what it became. We're the ones who like I said, we were appointing Nazi people to NATO, the UN. Then through Operation Paperclip, we brought them into the intelligence community here in the United States, and we even employed them in NASA. And it almost makes you wonder, did we bring them? Were they Nazi defectors and we brought them over? Or were they always our employees? And they didn't have to defect because they were always planning on coming back to the US. That's what but this is a pattern now. And to hear people like AOC and others try and justify supporting literal Nazism because of Russia, supposedly, even though the Ukraine itself literally said there is no threat of an imminent attack. I don't know why Biden keeps repeating that there is, but they already said there isn't. But nonetheless, they keep trying to hide behind this fear of Russia to justify supporting Nazis.
Yep. No, and Nico, you're right. Like, more people need to be talking about that, because I've seen, like, especially all over, if you watch CNN, MSNBC, they are advocating for Joe Biden, like, giving Ukraine weapons. We should not be giving them weapons of any sort. And I don't care like what anyone says. If you send a country a bunch of weapons and ammunition and says, okay, here you go, have at it, that sends a strong message. Without even telling them to like rise up. That sends a message, and it also sends a message to Russia as well. And I was talking to people too about the pipelines that a lot of people don't know about. I'll see if I can find that again.
There's always pipelines involved, yeah.
But it just reminds me, like, one of the things that I know, Tulsi's opinion has changed a lot now, but one of the things that Tulsi Gabbard like did express is like she was against like these regime change wars, and that a lot of times
she came out against the warmongering that we've been doing against Russia, which is good.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of
Thankfully,
times,
yeah.
like when the United States gets involved, it's because there's resources that are involved. And that's what I want more people to understand. It's not about the women and the children, which they always use that excuse. It's not about the people in those countries. It's because there's resources there that the United States government needs. And that is why they get involved.
Yep. People oftentimes forget like this situation currently isn't separate from what we saw in 2014 when they overthrew the government, the one that came before Zelensky, who's currently holding power. It's not separate from the Hunter Biden Burisma situation. This situation isn't even separate from the impeachment. It's a continuation of what we've already seen. And it's an attempt to kind of like establish a foothold that was somewhat removed when Trump got into power and Zelensky took over in the Ukraine. That's what they're reestablishing themselves. They're justifying saying, by the way, those weapons, they aren't being used on Russia. I'll tell you that because Ukraine knows better. The weapons are falling into the hands of the Nazis, and then the West Ukraine is now using them on East Ukraine. They're not being used on Russians. So we're literally, they say that they're trying to, like AOC, oh, we're just trying to help them be self-determined. Self-determined in what way? Like so they destroyed themselves from the inside. They're using the weapons on their own people. So it seems like it's just merely another attempt to destabilize a powerhouse and a foothold in an important region, because when countries are unstable and regions are unstable, that's when the U.S. tends to walk in, offers or at least pretends to offer stability, and they take advantage of the situation. But there is like energy plays a huge part in it. That's one of the reasons why the U.S. had control over Burisma. Like this is just like the norm. But at the same time, there does seem to be an attempt to kind of like challenge Russia even further militarily, because everybody at this point knows, I feel like if they watch your show, they know we fund terrorism around the world. Syria not being excluded from that. And everywhere Russia goes and the people they team up with, they seem to eradicate terrorism and make it very, very difficult for the U.S. to maintain the lie of, oh, well, we have to go and, go into Syria to defeat terrorism. But while we're there, we're going to take out Assad. Well, then Russia goes, takes out the terrorists, at least, until the U.S. brings them back. And then there's no reason for the U.S. to be there. And so the U.S. leaves, Russia comes in, any given country, terrorists get blown up, gone, done, eradicated. U.S. comes back with some nonsensical excuse like chemical weapons attacks. All of a sudden, terrorists start showing back up. Like this has like been a consistent pattern, and Russia stands in their way because now it becomes recognizable that whenever another country and Russia pair up, terrorism is leaving. But whenever the U.S. comes back in, all of a sudden terrorism follows, and the pattern is becoming more and more apparent. So I think that the U.S. is trying stupidly to put Russia in its place militarily as well. And that's just not a smart move, because I'm trying to tell you, I was in the military, y'all. We're not going to Russia and winning.
No.
The Russia was fighting a whole world war and still beat Germany at home.
Yep.
The people, those weren't even real soldiers like that. People beat the hell out of German soldiers. We're not messing with Russia on their own territory. That's just crazy.
We would be doomed. I want to show you guys that pipeline map really quick so you can see what this looks like. And this is not the only pipeline there, so you'll see that there's another one as well. If you notice, there's an orange line and there's a dotted green line. So this is called the Nord 2 pipeline. And it says, why is it divisive? The pipeline is seen as much as a geopolitical tool as anything else, a way for Russia to control the gas supply to Europe, which directly affects fuel prices. Manipulation of the pipeline could increase Europe's dependency on Russia for energy while straining tensions between otherwise united EU members. And here's the map here. So you can see Russia on the left, and the pipeline goes all the way down to Germany. So that is the pipeline that is in question. And I'm going to play this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would even make the argument, like, is it really about Europe's dependency on Russia for oil? Because I don't think that that's the reason why. The reason why is because it makes Russia viable competition for other major oil distributors like the United States or OPEC. That's what I think it's really about. Because, I mean, if it's just easier, and Russia sells their oil for cheaper. So there's that.
Mm-hmm.
So it creates viable competition that the U.S. doesn't want, as it, of course, aids, OPEC and but U.S. was the number one distributor of oil in the world. We don't want competition. That's what it comes down to.
Basically, I have a video here from Caleb Maupin, his opinion about this. He's very furious in this video, and he has every right to be. So I'm going to play this really quick. Give me just a second. And I think Caleb's like on a balcony in this video. I'm not quite sure. Yeah,
he's in New York, so
okay.
He's probably in a balcony at work.
Okay. All right, here we go.
Folks, the U.S. Secretary of State and the Russian Foreign Minister just had a meeting trying to resolve some of this tension. And just a few hours later, we hear that the USA is sending military helicopters to Ukraine. You got Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, they're sending anti-tank missiles. Everyone is pouring all kinds of weapons into Ukraine. This is insanity. This is just complete and utter insanity. Russia is not going to invade Ukraine. Russia is not going to invade Ukraine. Russia is not going to invade Ukraine. You know how many times they have to say this? They don't want a war. They don't want to invade Ukraine. This is insane. This is nuts. I have never seen anything like this. This government in Ukraine that they are giving lethal weapons to is full of neo-Nazis. They tear down World War II memorials. Okay, they've got an actual Nazi battalion, the Azov battalion. It's a section of the army that's like Nazi. Mm-hmm. They just had a parade for Stepan Bandera, who is a Nazi collaborator. This is insanity. You don't stop war. You don't bring peace by pouring weapons into countries. This insane rhetoric has got to stop. This is going to lead to a disaster. Nobody is benefiting from this. We are edging closer and closer and closer to World War III. This is a complete and utter nightmare. It's got to stop. I mean, no one has any idea how dangerous this is. This is not a joke. This is really extreme. A lot of people are going to get hurt, and a lot of people are going to die if this doesn't stop. Okay? This has got to stop. This has to stop. It must stop. You have no idea how dangerous this is. This is a nightmare unfolding. This is really a nightmare.
So Azov, United States actually directly armed the Azov battalion, forking over anti-tank rocket launchers and even sending a team of army officers to meet in the field with Azov commanders in 2017. And then Congress passed legislation forbidding military aid to Azov on the grounds of its white supremacist ideology. No, Nazi ideology. Let's be very clear about that. The Trump administration's authorization, though, of $200 million in offensive weaponry and aid to the Ukraine obviously makes it likely that it's going to fall back into his hands, because they introduced that legislation, but then sent $200 million in aid. We know where it's going to end up, right? So we're not just, once again, like the Azov that he was just talking about, who has a Nazi battalion, the U.S. sent army officers to help out with. So Nazis. Mm-hmm. We are helping Nazis, and we're on the brink of another world war. Coinky dink? No, it is not. We are literally helping Nazis start World War III as we speak. And some people got mad at me for not voting for Biden, and he's giving weapons to Nazis. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. If you fired someone for not holding your Nazis account, or for trying to hold your Nazis accountable, or you got someone fired in Ukraine, that's what led to the whole Ukraine Gate scandal. You bragged about it to the CFR, to the Council of Foreign Relations. Okay. And then you funded Nazis in the Obama administration. Now you're funding Nazis while you're the president. Okay. With weapons, money, knowing those weapons are being used against their own people. Okay. Just like Nazis do. At what point are you not a Nazi? And at what point do we not start? Because everybody wanted to come at people like myself who was like, I'm not going to vote for Biden or Trump because I don't vote for like assholes that shouldn't be in power. Like, that's crazy. But I got shamed for that. I was called racist. I was called a Nazi sympathizer from Biden voters, the president who is directly arming Nazis. the hilarious irony, first of all, but also the audacity. You voted for a Nazi. That's where we're at right now. Literally, that I don't know what else what do you call it, Sabby? I don't know what else to call it. But if you walk like a duck and you quack like a duck, that look like a swastika tattoo on your arm. That's all I'm saying.
Look, tomorrow is February 1st. I better not hear one word from Joe Biden about Black History Month. Not one word. Oh, don't even come at us with that. I don't want to. And you know what he's trying to do now? Now he's trying to say, "Oh, I'm going to try my best to put in a Black female for the Supreme Court pick," as if that is supposed to overshadow the fact that you're giving weapons to Nazis abroad.
Literal Nazis. And it's wild to me because you'll see some of the Jewish media. I don't know if they're actually practicing, but a lot of them are Jewish. The same ones who come out every time someone criticizes Israel. And they're out here cheering on this warmongering from the Biden administration. And I'm thinking to myself, like, are y'all really cheering on as this man gives weapons to Nazis? But we can't even say that, hey, maybe Palestinians should have equal rights without being called anti-Semitic. This is where we're at. Have the narratives become so skewed and blurred that you got Jewish journalists who attack you for asking for Palestinian equity, cheering on Biden as he gives weapons to Nazis to kill people in East Ukraine? This is wild. Nazis. We can't say it enough. Just the Nazis. They're here. We're funding them. We were funding them during Hitler's reign. We funded them after. We gave them jobs after. We gave them high-level positions in the UN and NATO after. We're giving them weapons now. We're literally having our military meet with their military for strategic reasons now. Nazis. Yep. Nazis. Like, I don't know what else. Like, no one is taking this shit seriously. I mean, Caleb clearly is, but no one is taking this this. I mean, it's lunacy. It's almost as idiotic as voting for a segregationist president because you don't want a racist in power. It's almost like that, because then you might actually get a fucking Nazi, which we got.
Yep. I'm going to show you guys what Cenk had to say about this. He's not any better. So as you can imagine, so Primo Radical actually tweeted this. And he said, it seems as though Billionaire Funded Left Inc. is trying to co-opt the term grifter to describe all anti-imperialists. Never mind their own grift of trying to get leftists in the US to buy into Washington's propaganda that Russia and China are bent on global domination. So I'm going to play this video from Cenk. And all I have to say is just brace yourself. Just brace yourself for what's going on.
The border, given the size of the massive violation of international law in this case, if they cross the border and actually try to take the country, obviously you freeze all Russian assets all across the world. I don't care who it is, every oligarch, anything related to Putin, seize. Now, again, there'll be some idiots not idiots, to be fair, they're grifters, and I don't know who they're working for, some portion of them, but they'll pretend that people pretending to be on the left, okay, and maybe a couple of people who actually are on the left and are, don't understand world politics at all, who are like, oh my God, freezing the assets of oligarchs. That's so warlike. With him taking Ukraine.
I'm sorry, I have to chime in for just a second. Is he seriously talking about people who pretend to be on the left?
Bruh, oh Jesus. Like, literally, the man made more. He's switched like positions, like ideologically, more than Nicki Minaj switches wigs, bro. First of all, like, for him to have the audacity to say somebody's pretending to be on the left. Like, let me be very clear about something. I think I made my stance pretty official on this one. I'm actually in the camp where I believe that Cenk and TYT has always been a psyop, and I think that Cenk is an asset. If you actually do the math on when he would have gotten to the States, it'd actually be around the time that the Cold War, or Turkey specifically, would have been splitting in that weird little gray area from like they just wouldn't be. They're like, there's like the strong anti-communist sentiment, quote unquote, and a lot of them came to the States. It was the same ones that were actually partially responsible, or at least wholly responsible, for the Armenian genocide. That's obviously when you're talking about an Armenian genocide denier like Cenk, it makes a lot of sense. Turkey has always had people in the pockets of the United States. And if you actually look up when Google bought YouTube, the same year is when TYT got all their venture capitalists for funding. And it doesn't make any sense, because when you leave MSNBC because you're just too radical and they just wouldn't let you say what you want to say, you don't leave mainstream media to start an honest journalism platform and then get venture capitalist funding because of it. You get shunned out. That's how that generally works. Trust me, I know. So when you take into account that everything Cenk seems to do seems to be posturing, like building up an audience, and then lying to them and telling them, don't believe your lying ears, don't believe your lying eyes, man. Like, Hillary's it. That's the best we got. Biden's the best we got. Fundraising for a segregationist. Like, this shit was just, but Turkey doesn't like, the Turks that came here do not like Russia. He said, freeze Russian assets everywhere. Yep. We have to make sure that we're holding diplomats accountable. Like, something nuanced, which also wouldn't even make any sense, because if that was the case, can you imagine if every country froze the assets of the U.S. and U.S. oligarchs and anybody above a certain income in the U.S. For every country that the United States invaded? Bruh, we would never be able to access most of our money, because that's how many countries we've invaded. But if Russia, quote unquote, which once again, he's setting the stage and making a super emotional argument based off of nothing. Why would Russia invade East Ukraine when East Ukrainians sympathize with Russia? Actually, they want to be back with Russia. East Ukraine wouldn't mind it, but they don't mind being independent as long as they can still be friendly towards Russia. The West Ukraine's job is to ensure that East Ukraine never becomes part of Russia again, like it used to be. That's why there's that big split down the middle, because West Ukraine used to be the entirety of the Ukraine. East Ukraine used to be part of USSR. And so why would Russia's not going to invade East Ukraine? That doesn't make any sense. Nor would they just bring the ire of all of NATO on them, because they know China is coming to back them up. That's going to happen. And if China backs them up, well, there are a lot more countries that are ended up in the pockets of China that need China to thrive than there are in the U.S., because the U.S. is just messing up all their relationships now. So Russia, you could say what you want to about Putin. If he wanted to start a world war, he could have did it. Basically, he's reacting to the United States trying to do another coup in Ukraine. That's what he's reacting to. And putting the military on your own border to protect yourself after the U.S. gave weapons to Nazis who want to see you obliterated is perfectly reasonable. There's nothing weird about that. Imagine going to El Paso, Texas, and you see a bunch of National Guardsmen. What are you going to do? Call Washington Post? Hey, man, U.S. is crazy, bro. Like, they must be about to invade Mexico. No, it's their border. They're a sovereign country who wants the military on their border. That makes sense. Nah, man, that just the way they're moving, man. The way they're moving makes me think they're going to have. No, that's ridiculous. And it's the same thing here. But Russia's reacting to what the U.S. has done. Cenk is an idiot and a sellout and a warmonger. And everybody should remember he used to be a neocon, or it really still is. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Ukraine with 175,000 troops is not warlike, but freezing their assets is? Are you insane? Right? So, and what about the people of Ukraine? Do they count? Are they human beings? As a progressive, do you care about them? Do you care about their freedom? Do you care about their rights? Right? So now once you get beyond freezing the assets, that's when it gets impossible.
Right.
Because what are you gonna do, start a war with Russia? That's beyond a disaster. On the other hand, what are you gonna do? Let them take one country after another, after another, after another? If you don't stop them in Ukraine,
and if you don't stop them in Ukraine, they might be the U.S.
Right.
But if you don't stop them there, then this world is in a lot of trouble. Because I guarantee you, very soon after, China takes Taiwan, because it's open season.
Yeah, you make a lot of good points.
Holy shit, boy, that was a jump
I just want to remind everyone that Cenk also supported the drone strikes in Libya. Yeah, he supported that. FYI, if you go back like back during that year, you have to go far back for TYT episodes, but you can find those episodes where it was actually him and Jimmy arguing against it. And Jimmy was like, well, no, like that's not okay. And Cenk supported it. And he also denied that the Armenian genocide was a real thing when he has an Armenian co-host.
So the story behind that is, so he obviously named it TYT first, ironically enough. So he's a Turk who named his show after the people who committed the Armenian genocide. And then, because it started to become a bigger deal, all of a sudden he found the singular Armenian person who would be willing to be the co-host of a show named after the people that genocided her people. Like the only one. And then she almost within 2 or 3 years was on Forbes 30 for 30. Because we all know independent journalists who are really bucking the system end up in Forbes 30 for 30 under 30. That doesn't make any sense. It's just the setup for it. And then what does Anna do? You know, Cenk has evolved a lot on that issue. I've talked to him about it a lot off camera. I'm gonna tell y'all a little secret. I actually am friends with the guy who founded Armenian Life magazine. He lives out in LA. Armenian people don't claim Anna. None of them. She's a disgrace to them. They can't believe it. Because, I mean, can you imagine, Sabby, if we joined a media organization called the KKK? We're just trying to, I don't give a damn if you call them the cool color kids. You just call these people the KKK? Oh, I named it after a song. I don't give a damn. But it didn't matter to Anna because it was another opportunity. I mean, think about it. Anna was rewarded handsomely for her little sellout show that she got a job. She's a professor at the University of Southern California. Come on, guys. This is Anna we're talking about. In journalism, nonetheless, when she really hasn't ever done real journalism, if we're being real. So there's that. 2, she ends up with, she's like the second, like she's not just like a part owner, she's like the second majority stakeholder besides Cenk in TYT. He has to go through her with every major decision they make. And then, of course, you got the Forbes 30 under 30, all the opportunities that have come after that. She ends up like at some NATO conference with Madeleine Albright or whatever. Like it's like she got rewarded handsomely for selling out. Like, yeah, because it wouldn't have really worked otherwise unless an Armenian gave him the clear. It is so bizarre how everything's set up and worked out for them. Now they're the largest, or at least they were the largest network on media network on YouTube. Yep. It didn't make any sense unless you think about the money that went behind it, in the eyes that looked away in order for it to happen. All this fake outrage, and not a single one of them, and nobody in the mainstream ever comes at the Young Turks for being named the Young Turks, which is bizarre. in an era where everybody's sensitive to everything, no one ever comes at them. It's weird as hell for Cenk to pretend. What about the Ukrainian people? Literally, you denied Armenian genocide, bro. Like, we had to convince you. And I'm not quite sure you've been actually convinced. But it is interesting though, because what about we literally overthrew their government in 2014. What about their rights? Exactly. That's what we're trying to figure out. Maybe stop interfering in their government and they can determine what the best route for their country is. Cenk keeps leaving out the part where the only reason that East Ukraine is not part of Russia is because of the United States' initial interference in the USSR that the CIA openly admits to. They hired intelligentsia like academics and celebrities and things like that, gave them propaganda, spread it throughout Eastern Europe. They sanctioned Russia into oblivion, the same tactics that we do now, that we use now, and they balkanized the region. And from that is where the Ukraine breaks off from Russia, East Ukraine does, and becomes part of West Ukraine. And then obviously NATO has been trying to manipulate that situation ever since. But if you think about it, who benefited the most from the balkanization of the USSR? It was the EU and NATO, because almost all those countries joined the EU, except for like Turkey. I want to say Rome. No, Bulgaria and Romania did join eventually. It was like maybe 2 that didn't join the EU, but that was always the goal. If you look at who benefits, that's where you can figure out who the lies are coming from, because of who benefits. And Cenk clearly is receiving a check from somebody, but for him to call anybody here fake leftist, bro, I've been called fake leftist for I don't know how long, and I'm just starting to realize, like, oh shit, when you actually are more left, then you get called conservative, because there has to be this perception created that, oh, the reason that I'm not agreeing with them is because they're actually they're conservative. Actually, that's why. Well, no, they're left to you on every issue. No, you just think that's left, but here's what's really left: caring about the rights of those people so much that you give Nazis weapons to bomb them. Self-determination. That's left.
Mm-hmm. Couple of questions here. So Jordan said, damn, just got my answer. Turns out this is part of the 2% of issues that Sab agrees with Kyle on. Yes. Oh, you missed that, Nico. Last week I made a joke. I said I disagree with Kyle probably 98% of the time.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I mean, no, I bet you been going in on Kyle. I mean, he kind of deserves it. But Kyle was attacked by Vouch, wasn't he? Yeah.
I told
Kyle's
people,
had a lot of faults lately, but he's definitely anti-interventionist.
Yeah. I was like, oh boy, this is interesting. I have to agree with Kyle on this. Valerie said, does Germany have a problem with the pipeline? So that's a good question. From what I've seen,
in the context of NATO, yeah, but I don't think there's anything specific to Germany that they have a problem with.
They don't seem to be as concerned about it as the United States. From what I've read, they don't seem to be as
How do you control? So gas is gone. So there's this lie that permeates amongst like Politico. The president doesn't have that much control over oil prices. That's a lie. Actually, the president, especially in the times of emergency, can set the price on oil when like on barrels of oil whenever the hell they want to. Like, that's just the facts of the matter. It's known, but there's a lie that, and also we're the number one exporters of oil in the world, and we make most of our own oil. So at that point, why would our prices go up for oil we already have and are already in the process of producing? You can't. So what happens now if I am a country in the EU, or hell, even if you're a country here in the US, and I can just go to Russia if they're going to sell it to me for a fourth of your price, because they have plenty of it. All of a sudden, you can't just keep prices up, can you? And whatever reason you have for maintaining these ridiculously high oil and gas prices, like it gets thrown out the window. Whatever your plan was to do with that, it gets thrown out the window. And so Russia having that much access, and by that much access, I mean like a fraction of the access of the rest of the Western world and NATO to that much energy for distribution, becomes a problem. But because it isn't, they keep saying it's because, it increases the dependency on Russia's oil and energy. No. What it does is it decreases dependency on the monopoly that people like the US and OPEC have on oil prices, and it creates competition. In the US, when it comes to capitalism, it's never been about creating competition. It's always been about crushing it, because they don't want to really compete in a free and fair market.